For a long time now, I've said that Star Wars has a problem when it comes to ending its stories. Return of the Jedi's original cut, in my opinion, isn't a satisfying end to the Empire, as dozens of books seem to agree. Revenge of the Sith is a bit more emotionally satisfying as a trilogy finale, but it doesn't have to do a lot more than set things up for A New Hope. The Clone Wars at first didn't end, and then the way it finished was kind of just this vibey tone poem, leaving space for Ahsoka's already established appearance in Rebels. Speaking of which, Rebels' ending is not especially conclusive. Thrawn fucks off into nowhere, Sabine and Ahsoka stand in front of a painting. The Bad Batch ends with heart, but it feels kind of rushed. Resistance and Book of Boba Fett also end too soon. The Mandalorian ends without commitment. The Acolyte was fantastic, but it finished with a cliffhanger, and then Disney took it out back and shot it. Same thing for Solo. Things are also kind of weird in the books and comics. The conclusion of Alphabet Squadron is pretty important to me, but other than that, I think it's kind of the exception. The Last Jedi has a great ending, and it is the second movie in its trilogy. As much as I have made my peace with The Rise of Skywalker, I think it roundly fails the admittedly quite big task of finishing a then 40-year-old series. Star Wars is, say it with me, a large semi-closed intertextual apparatus. It's this weird mess of continuity and discontinuity that commingle and blend to create a really interesting tapestry for storytelling and meaning making. That can be a strength. I believe that. But with that strength come weaknesses, perhaps greatest of which is that Star Wars is uneven. It's got a lot of examples of really strong setup, and then it rarely knows how to conclude its plot and character journeys in ways that are both emotionally cathartic and that actually tie up most loose ends. There's no Sozin's Comet, no Return of the King, no perfect bow to tie off even sections of the series with. The good Star Wars ending is possible, but only theoretically. Scientists have yet to observe it in a laboratory setting. Prequels don't have to be inconclusive. Sequels don't have to be distracted. Source text and world building can be wonderful things. And I don't think that they carry some inherent trait that means that a Star War can't end well. And now, Andor is over. Season 1 was damn good. It was resonant and nuanced and politically smart, the beginning of what might be this sci-fi anti-fascist manifesto. But was Andor actually strong enough to fix Star Wars' biggest weakness? Did Andor do it? Did they finally make an ending as cathartic as a show like this demands? Did Andor stick the landing? It did okay, I guess. Hello and welcome to Daughters of Ferrix, the show that'll stop clickbaiting Andor in the title after like 2 or 3 more times this year. I'm your host, Eleanor Mueller, and with me is my co-host, Sophia Dunstan.
Hello. I must say, I also felt a shocking ambivalence towards the ending of this show.
Yeah, it's not the end that matters. It's the Andors we made along the way.
That's right. And God, did we make Andors along the way.
We made so many Andors. There is a reason that Daughters of Ferrix is not a weekly show. It is because it is too much work, and it is worse when it is weekly.
We have become like a printing press, but instead of like newspapers, we just spit out Andor episodes, and that has become what we are for the last 4 weeks.
It's a nightmare. I hate it. I'm never doing, I hate commentary. I hate reaction stuff. I'm never making it again.
Yeah, we're going to go back to talking about normal Star Wars things like rural identity and clothing.
The good stuff. That's what I like. I like having time to sit with something, think about it, ruminate, write about it. No, my reactions to Andor have to be metastasized in less than 24 hours after I first see it. That is the requirement, and we've done okay. Whatever.
Hi everyone, Ellie editing, you know the drill. Up front, I just want to apologize for the it's been a while since this episode was going to come out. It was recorded the day after the finale released, but I got so burnt out editing and then going to Japan and then editing more for the Andor episodes that I crashed like really hard once the season had come out. And since that point, it's been kind of weird month for me. First up, I got fired from my second job. That was really cool. And secondly, and much worse, my 11-month-old kitten Kiki, who you might recognize from this show, went and swallowed an entire decorative eraser whole, which, stopped her from eating and drinking for several days and meant that she had to get a very pricey surgery. This octopus eraser cost me $5,000. Very cool. I posted about this elsewhere, but if you haven't and you're willing, you can donate to her treatment fund at tinyurl.com/stupidkiki. I'll put a link in the description. And if you have already contributed, thank you for that help. I feel like I now entirely subsist on the kindness and generosity of the people I know and the people I meet doing this show. So that's not something I ask for more of lightly. More episodes soon, especially the panel I did over at Star Wars Celebration Japan. That's real. That is still happening. And if you're watching this episode the week of release, I'm going to start playing Disco Elysium for the very first time, live streaming over on the Daughters of Ferrix YouTube channel. That's on Sunday, July 6th at noon Pacific. Seriously, I don't know jack shit about this game. All I know is it's the thing that every lefty recommends. So I'm excited to play it. I'm excited to show it off to all of y'all. Come join in. Say hi in the chat. Ask me Star Wars questions. See what this thing's about. It'll be fun. Okay, enough time wasting. Back to your much overdue Andor. Rounding off this journey with us, I'd like to thank Jeannie Logan, Geoff, Chando, Jojo, Thrango, and Dat Trans Chick for supporting us over on Patreon, and thank you to Jordy for raising their pledge. They are all the spliced metro antenna, using Imperial broadcast power to get this show to the world. If you're interested in early access to the show, episode outtake videos, the Daughters of Ferrix Discord server, and our bonus episodes, check us out at patreon.com/Daughters of Ferrix. Additionally, considering how many new patrons we've gotten over the last few weeks, I want to give a bit more back to you all. So I've decided to shift every patron reward down a tier. So early access to the show is available now for $3, bonus episodes for $7, outtakes for $10. This is USD, to be clear, so on and so forth. If that sounds up your alley, feel free to check us out. I really appreciate the people who have been with us for the past year or so as we have done that. I like affording groceries. Thank you.
I also like affording groceries. I would go so far as to say that I would think it would be great if everyone could afford groceries.
That's communism, Sophie. Get out of town with that.
I don't even know that is communism.
It's communism when everyone can not starve to death. It's communism when everybody isn't disposable by the state. All right. Andor, number 4. We are all out of milk. Our guest today has an MA in political science with an emphasis on democracy and comparative politics, and they are looking forward to the release of a chapter they've written over pedagogical movements in Latin America. Corey Sullivan.
Hello. Insert intro here, I guess.
I feel like you would get along so well with this professor that I had, who was also an expert in comparative politics in Latin America.
Ooh, okay. Well, we'll have to talk about that. I'm intrigued.
Actually, I do have to ask, Corey, since I only found out about this thing that you've written yesterday when I asked, can you, for my benefit at the very least, can you tell me more about this work that you've done?
So basically it's in a bigger book on different educational movements sort of within Latin America. And so there's a bunch of different professors and therefore authors talking about, different topics. And so we specifically focused on the pedagogical movement in Colombia. What we did is we kind of talked about the way that technocratic reforms have affected Latin America and how a lot of times it's one size fits all. And then you have teachers unions on the other hand, who a lot of times get a bad rep. People do not really like them. And so we try to provide a more nuanced perspective of things, try to make an argument that says, hey, there's actually a lot there. We shouldn't just dismiss teachers outright and say that they're just going to try to make more money and to work less and that sort of thing. They actually do care about students, and they think that these technocratic reforms aren't doing enough for the students when, you know, they can't necessarily eat or make it to class on time. And yeah, that's sort of the brief summary. I hope that helps a little bit.
It does really help. I will say that sounds like an extremely thankless pursuit.
Yeah, a little bit. But it was fun to write.
All right. Andor, again, still. We've had, at this point, 21 episodes of Andor, and they were really good. They were really cool. Actually, you know what? Fuck you. And they have uncassianed our Andor. So the first episode, no Cassian. Cassian gone. Clea time.
Good riddance.
Get that fucking layabout out of here. You wanted to quit. This is what he gets. No.
Clea, she never quits.
Clea does not quit. Clea does not quit. To me, right out of the gate, I think the strongest thing about these episodes is just how Clea heavy they are. I think the choice to focus on her on and off, ooh, it just feels good. It's so gratifying to someone who, I feel like as soon as Clea got to be a character in season 1, I was like, oh, I like that one. That's one that no one's going to talk about enough. So thank you, Andor.
You can cut this out, but she really does in a lot of ways, like, kind of remind me of your partner, Ellie.
I'll pass that on. Clea does, much like my girlfriend, do the most and get the least thanks for it. So
Well, and I was also going to say, like,
has brown hair.
well, yes. And in terms of like vibe, I think is quite similar. So
Sidekick to a tall blonde. So I'm that's a joke. I'm the sidekick. So
well, so is Luthen.
oh, you are correct about that. So what these episodes are is kind of the unraveling of the Axis network, the network that we kind of saw at play. I mean, all throughout this, but especially in Andor season 1, that is like this intelligence and supply network all the way, you know, back from Luthen, from Clea. This is where Vel got her start. This is what Cassian bought into and Willman was a part of. Like all of this stuff. A lot of baggage here in the Axis network. And kind of as a result, all of this is also super ISB heavy. We have Axis, we have the ISB, and both are coming apart. At the very beginning of the episode, the big bell is set off. There's a warning light or whatever saying that Lonnie needs out. Lonnie's the ISB plant. He's the supervisor, pretty fucking high up for a plant for Luthen. And Clea sends Luthen in, gives him a very conspicuously gives him a gun, sends Luthen to have this conversation with Lonnie. Lonnie got word that Dedra is planning something, almost certainly coming after Luthen, right? They are working on borrowed time right now. You immediately get the sense that what Dedra is about to pull is not exactly kosher. And Lonnie's like, that aside, I have more important things. The reason I am actually here is that for a very long time, Lonnie has had Dedra Miro's email login. And
yeah, her like Dedra Miro at isb.com.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Her Google workspace.
ISB.gov, surely. ISB.imp, maybe? He's got her login, he's got her code cert, and after 2 hours in her shit, he fucking cracks it. He figures out, I mean, what he sees as what they've been looking for this whole time, which is that Krennic has been working on a secret weapon for over a decade.
I wasn't followed, because if they knew what I found, they wouldn't have let me out of the building. I need safe passage. Luthen, I need it today. Obviously.
We did it, gang. We got to the Death Star stuff.
Wait, that was the Death Star? What?
It was the Death Star? I'm shocked because we definitely didn't know ahead of time that it was the Death Star.
It's always the Death Star.
Well, and I like how like manic he is about this.
He really sells all down the chain, right? You have just kind of getting ahead of ourselves. You have this chain of information in these episodes where you have this secret information that itself is kind of learned through essentially Dedra secreting away information packets. But you have this information that goes to Dedra that is read by Lonnie that then is verbally communicated to Luthen, verbally communicated from Luthen to Clea, verbally communicated from Clea to Cassian. And at every step of the way, the person who is like trying to convince the person in the network of this thing's importance has to like basically scream it, be like, this is the most important thing. This guy died for this. We have to take this seriously. I mean, it is very much like Rogue One, where Jyn is the only kind of recipient of this message from her dad, and the Rebel Alliance is just like not interested in doing anything about it. And even Cassian's like, you're not going to be able to convince these guys. I had this problem 3 days ago. Yeah. But it all just like is stacking up. It's so very serious for Lonnie. Lonnie is like, okay, you have to make sure you like look after my wife and kid though. And Luthen's like, yeah, I'll do that.
We're going to Yavin. Ha ha.
Yeah, we'll go to Yavin. Luthen gets all the info from Lonnie, and he ties up the loose end.
Ice is a bitch, yeah.
Luthen leaves Lonnie dead on a bench. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if that was the wrong choice, but I don't know if that was the only choice. You know, Luthen's gonna Luthen. So, Lonnie's dead. Rip Lonnie. So it is go time. Dedra's coming after Luthen, and Luthen has to get this information off of Coruscant. In Luthen's shop, he and Clea are basically scrambling. You get the sense that, you know, they know that Dedra's coming, but they don't know when. Luthen says that he's going to be the one to do the burn.
Yeah, and so he like dumps this like chemical crap into the machine that they use to communicate with the network.
Yeah, he fucking dumps acid all over his control board, like the operator's board with all the plugs and shit. Well, mostly he starts to do it, then there's a fucking doorbell. And Dedra is here at the shop.
You're open.
Fuck.
Please join us.
Can I just say, when she appears, like I knew that was her, but I still my heart just dropped because you're just like, oh, it's like fully unraveled at this point.
Right, it's like seeing the Grim Reaper at the door. Like, and immediately they have this really coded conversation where Dedra is kind of playing it cool. She's like, I've seen this shop, I've never come in here. Is everything real? Luthen is like, only 2 pieces in the gallery are definitely fake. Can you find them? Haha, we're doing writing. He shows her this little knife. We have another fucking Chekhov's gun for this opening sequence. And it kind of starts to switch gears. Dedra's like, well, I have something to sell to you. For you to see if it's authentic.
An Imperial Starpath unit.
Oh, this shot is delicious. She opens up this box and it's the fucking cube. It's the cube thing that Cassian stole and took to Ferrix.
She's so eager to open the box. There's this like glint in her eye as she opens the box. Like she has been waiting for this.
And holding on to this object for 4 or 5 years, like depending on how you count it. I don't know. It is like, I'm sure, exhilarating. The way this is performed by Denise Goff, like, oh my God.
Her performance this like whole season, just incredible.
They gave her meat, this one. This whole scene is really something. And she's like gloating. Dedra's so disgusted by Luthen and talking about how he's been hiding in the shelter of Imperial peace and quiet. And Luthen is like, you fucking hate freedom, you fascist bastard. He doesn't call her that, but he should. And they're really talking past one another, where neither of them is actually responding to what the other is saying. And then while Dedra is monologuing, she notices the smoke coming through the back room. And she's like, oh, fucking hell, he's destroying evidence. And she panics. She like calls people in. And while her back is turned,
Luthen sticks himself.
you can't trust this motherfucker.
Oh.
Luthen stabs himself with the little knife.
Seriously, he should have done that and also something else.
It is clear that he does this because he is the most valuable thing in that entire building, right? As far as the former Axis network is concerned.
Well, and the most dangerous.
Exactly. The most dangerous thing the ISB could get is Luthen himself. And Dedra knows that because they immediately call in like an ambulance and shit.
And it works, and they stabilize him with magic Star Wars medicine.
With magic Star Wars technology. No, I mean, he's in critical condition. They wheel him out of there. Well, probably not wheel. They whisk him out of there into the little ambulance ship, all these ISB tactical guys, and Clea sees them taking him. You go from here to the ISB, which is, again, a disaster. The news has just come in. Hirt has just heard that Lonnie is dead. Hirt and Lonnie kind of have this friendship. Hirt denies it later in the arc, but I don't believe him. Lonnie really is... Dedra basically says that he's like everywhere. He does all sorts of things in the ISB. He seems like he is friends with everybody. Lonnie has friends everywhere throughout the ISB. That's why he knew that Dedra was coming after Luthen, is because a guy of his who is friend of his from Tactical. That is kind of unraveling. Hirt comes into this now canceled meeting from Partagaz. Partagaz canceled the ISB like supervisors meeting because of what Dedra pulled, because this is a unsanctioned move that went badly. Partagaz has this line.
Miro called a raid this morning and it's gone badly. She believes she's found access. Or she did. He's apparently seriously wounded.
Sir.
You have every right to be upset. She's been warned about stepping over boundaries before.
But I really think it is worth noting, Partagaz likes this from Dedra when it works. It is not really about whether or not she's like a loose cannon or whether or not she breaks the rules. Breaking the rules is a pain in the ass for like her coworkers or whatever, but it is not a problem for Partagaz as long as she gets results. And that is always what their like private conversations lean towards. It's like, just actually do what you're trying to do, and all of this bullshit is not a problem. But she fucked it. She went in alone. Luthen killed himself in the shop.
Well, and I also think there's a nice callback to, I think, episode 4, where there's a comment about don't become too much of an individual. And that's exactly what the ISB is, right? Where it's like, yeah, at first, her doing these things is perfectly fine. But at some point, it becomes rebellious in nature, right? She's becoming a little too much of an individual. She's not complying. And at the end of the day, compliance is the thing. You do need to follow these orders and not become too much of an individual.
There's this space between what the Empire says to do and what the Empire actually wants of its, let's say, agents, where someone like Dedra, who has power, is expected to fudge the rules and to hide information and all of this mess, but you cannot push it too far. And it is only decided when it is too far if things start to unravel, because they don't care about the law, right? This is the real juxtaposition between Dedra and Cyril. Cyril does not toe that line. But notably, Cyril also doesn't know what's going on. Cyril does not have power. Cyril is not in the Empire's good graces because he doesn't bend those rules, because he is following them for their own sake. The Empire wants compliance from its subjects, and, I mean, structural abuses from the people who are in power. And there wasn't like a clearly delineated line. Dedra pushed it just a little too hard. I'm sure that everyone around her fudges that kind of stuff from time to time, and she just fucked it. This whole arc really gives a sense to why the ISB is not especially a factor during the Galactic Civil War proper. Like, this is not, oh, they're not in the movies. No, not that. It just, everything adjacent to the movies in canon also does not really have the ISB past episode 4.
Because they get cooked.
Because they get cooked. A lot of that is that they lose senior leadership in the Death Star explosion, the DS-1, but also, clearly it is that they lose a lot in this one. They lose a lot of ground. They are clearly scrambling and they don't have much to show for it afterwards. I bet after this point in the timeline or whatever, you have a lot less trust being placed in the ISB because they let this secret get out.
Well, because like for all of Andor, basically, like they have their hands in like every pie, right? Like they are sort of running the Imperial counter-rebel operation. And then after this, it's like, nope, you suck. It's the military's turn.
Well, and you do have like lingering traces of the ISB, right? During the war, you have ISB loyalty officers stationed on ships, little things like that. But I'm sure the actual like amount of power centralized to ISB HQ is like wildly diminished after this. So back to Clea, she is waiting in the safe house apartment, introduced in arc number 2. The wall is destroyed. Presumably there's a bunch of stuff hidden in there for Clea. They really convincingly, I think the performance from her actor really shines here too, where Clea is a disaster. She is like increasingly desperate throughout this episode and throughout this arc. You know, a lot of that is just that she doesn't have Luthen. It's not that she needs Luthen, but she cares about Luthen. And she's standing here in this safe house, and you start to get like these really well interspersed sort of flashback backstory things. It's very much like the Canary stuff in Arc 1 with Cassian. Clea remembers being a little girl hiding in a ship, basically in this war zone, where it sounds like these soldiers are killing people. They're trying to burn the entire street. It's all very vague. It's not about like places and dates. They don't say when this is. They don't say where it is. It is presumably about 20 years before this, just judging by what we know about Luthen. But again, not really clear. But Luthen, or as he's called here, Lear, is like this sergeant who is essentially hiding away in this ship too. He's not like a stowaway or anything. He is like doing soft desertion.
He's quiet quitting.
He's quiet quitting. He hears a sound from, you know, who we know is Clea. He goes to investigate. He sees this little girl. He doesn't like pull her out or anything. He hears people coming and he closes the hatch that she's hiding under. Someone comes in, checks on Luthen. He's like, why the fuck are you in here? And Luthen's like, oh yes, no, I definitely have a reason to be in here. And the guy leaves. Luthen opens up the hatch and offers his hand to Clea. The Luthen and Clea stuff in this episode is really, again, it is vague. It is gestures. This is the shape of these people's lives. I think it is really quite tasteful. You don't need to know more about Luthen. You don't need to know more about Clea.
No, it's just to sort of illustrate how difficult what's about to happen is for Clea, because she has to do some really fucked up shit.
It really is all about her. You get this real progression of Clea and Luthen when they first meet to kind of where they end up, or near enough to where they end up. The way Stellan Skarsgård looks in these scenes is genuinely like incredible. Like I assume that they have digitally de-aged this actor, and it is seamless. You cannot tell this man looks like he is genuinely like 50 or whatever. Like he does not look like that now. It is baffling how they have managed to do this. Mad props to fucking ILM. I am very impressed with the job that they did on these Luthen scenes. So Clea, modern Coruscanti, adult Clea, goes to find Luthen. She goes to a hospital, judging by the fucking sign at the top, Lina So Hospital. Very cute, very, I think, appropriate little reference to put in there. Lina So is the Supreme Chancellor for most of the High Republic books and comics. She's this person who is probably like important in galactic political history, but not much else. So I feel like naming a hospital after her is like really believable. I will say, weird nitpicky thing, The actual name on the sign has swapped the I character in Arabesh for the 1. It's a 1. They're very different characters, and someone, I don't know how this made it this far, but fully, this like CGI hospital, it looks good. CGI is not pejorative here, but this animated hospital just has the sign misspelled. I genuinely want to know what happened. It doesn't actually matter. No one cares.
Maybe it's like one of many, you know?
Yes, yeah, it's the first one.
The one is, yeah, that's what we're gonna say. Yeah.
They have Lena So Hospital 2, and it has a 2 with the I. That is, I mean, that is the type of bullshit they would say. Anyway, she goes to this hospital, really fucking cool setting. There's been little hospitals in Star Wars before, but mostly it's like military hospitals and stuff. I think there's a hospital in Sundari in the Clone Wars. That's the only like civilian hospital, but this is like much more grounded, I would say, and it is, oh.
Well, and it's fun because Clea gets to push like this sort of interesting, like presumably little old lady alien around the hospital as like her cloak.
The interaction on the elevator.
She's just like, "Rrr," and then Clea's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, so this is one hell of an infiltration mission. Luthen is not being held in a military base. Luthen is being held at this hospital because he is in critical condition. He's being kept alive, as said by, this attendant to Dedra. He's being kept alive by this machine. If they take him out, he's dead, which means that there is no extraction in this case. And Clea has to get in there and get to Luthen, but meanwhile, ISB has taken control of the entire floor. They are forcing patients and staff entirely out. Clea enters through the urgent care with like a bandage on her hand. She slips into an employee area and she cracks these weird ass like locker pods, and she eventually finds her way to a pair of yellow scrubs. Dude, it looks so good. They have genuinely realized this setting so well in this episode, and I am delighted.
I love Star Wars.
I guess also as far as Star Wars hospitals, you have the like Chancellor Palpatine Surgical Center, whatever the fuck that's called from episode 3, but that's a Nightmare Wizard Tower, so that's not really the same. Dedra is kind of checking on Luthen in the hospital. And then here, you have this amazing scene where the hospital itself is it's almost like a wide angular U shape. And Dedra's on like the right arm of the U, and Hirt is walking up the left. And you get this, like he's kind of going this way and she's going this way, and they see each other through the windows. Awesome set. And Hirt confronts Dedra with some like ISB guys behind him. He's like, you screwed the pooch. You have gone outside of your jurisdiction. You are under arrest. And she tries to be all like cool and chill about it, but she's clearly like, oh my God, oh no. Because there are a lot of things that she could get in trouble for that she has done.
Like the Gorman Massacre.
Well, I think that was one of her, Dedra's messed up a lot in this show. That's not one of them, unfortunately. That is, she did exactly what she was told to. So in the flashbacks, Luthen and Clea are selling some like statue. They're really trying to get into the like antiquities market, really like from the ground up. They're still looking kind of grubby and kind of beat up. Clea, I don't know this young actress's name, but oh my God, is she fantastic in this? She simultaneously like reads as like 12 years old and also like 18. I have no idea how old this child is supposed to be. She has this like practicality, this presence about her. Luthen's trying to haggle with a woman in a shop, and Clea basically takes over the haggling and convinces this woman, not by schmoozing her, but just by saying, we have another offer. I'm not going to smile for you. Give me $20. And she gets 18. They're walking away, and Luthen's like, these are our fake names. They are Luthen and Clea. And it's like, ah, cute. She asks if she's his daughter. He says, when it's useful. And that's not like a problem to her. She's like, okay, I'll think about it. She has such like a presence of mind here. The next scene with this young Leia is clearly Luthen has a little bit more hair. They have some nicer clothes. Luthen's trying to sell something to a guy in a market, and coming past them is like a line of chained up civilians. And basically the shopkeeper says, someone shot a stormtrooper the other day, and they keep finding people who did it. Those are the words he uses.
It's so good because like it just further illustrates how the Empire consistently manufactures these things, you know? And I just...
Right. It's not actually about justice or retribution.
Exactly.
It didn't start with the public order resentencing directive.
It didn't. And they march these guys through the street, and Luthen's like, okay, Clay, we gotta fucking go. We don't want to be around this shit. And Clay is like, no, I'm staying put. This child, this very young girl. And Luthen's like, okay, you're on your own. And he leaves her there while she watches this line of prisoners face a firing squad. It's very violent. This isn't like an escalation for Clea, right? It's not clear where she's from, what her deal is, but she was hiding from the soldiers that Luthen is with, or was with, pardon me. It doesn't escalate for Clea. It is this constant presence of violence in her life. And the next scene, the last scene with her and Luthen together, is them on almost certainly Naboo, right? This is like...
It 100% is.
This is like a Naboo cafe or restaurant, which I think they said that I think they were like filming leaks that they were filming in the locations they used for Naboo. So it makes perfect sense. Luthen and Clea, 13-year-old Clea or whatever the hell, are sitting in this restaurant and having this conversation while they are kind of glancing at a bridge across the lake on which is like an Imperial blockade. Surely, these big vehicles and a bunch of soldiers. In a previous scene, Clea was asking Luthen when they start fighting back, and Luthen says that they fight to win, and so they lose over and over and over again until they're ready. It is so very methodical for Luthen. Here you have this like weight of the moral kind of consequence of what they're doing weighing on Luthen. He wants to make it really clear, like, okay, take it in. This is a beautiful place. If we do this, we're not going to be here again, essentially. I need to know that you are making this choice. Luthen is cautious of what he's doing to this child. But Clea is essentially telling him, you're not doing anything to me. I'm already in this. There's almost a naivety to the caution that Luthen has, and I don't think he's wrong for it. I think he could even be more cautious with this literal child.
You mean he does it, child soldiers are bad?
I would say that child soldiers are bad. But like at the same time, Clea would be doing this anyway. Clearly, she'd be doing it more recklessly, but this is not a choice for her. And that's hard because Luthen is like, I lived most of my life not making choices. I need you to be doing so.
Life shows us what we stand to lose. Most people look away. We can't be like that.
But for Clea, it's not. This is the only way. Because of the violence that has been done to her, because of the violence that is done to everyone, this is what she does. It's what she'll always do, very clearly. Luthen is like, okay, you press this big button. And she's gonna do it. He's like, why are you doing this? You're being weird about it. And she's fully gonna do it. And Luthen's like, okay, no, I'm not gonna make you do this. And Luthen presses this button that explodes all of this like Imperial blockade. Trying to kind of save her from that still.
And then immediately after this, she gets into his room.
Well, so you have the Clea infiltration. She kidnaps an old woman in like a hover chair. She takes her up the elevator. There's Niamos's music. It's very cheeky. And she cannot get up. She tries to go in through the elevator way. There's a guard and he's like, nah, you gotta go back down. She goes back down. Instead, she goes up the stairs.
The stairs, which are heavily implied to have doctors like doing inappropriate things on them, according to our...
No, it's just, we'll talk about this later, but that's normal. It's normal not to want to be spied on. Just because you don't want cameras doesn't mean you're doing illicit things. It means that you want a modicum of privacy.
I've watched too much Grey's Anatomy, I think.
Clearly. I think it's perfectly reasonable not to want cameras in your workplace. There shouldn't be cameras at the park. There shouldn't be cameras at the hospital. You don't need cameras at the grocery store. You don't need 5 cameras on me when I'm doing self-checkout at the grocery store. Sorry, I'm mad about the Fred Meyer across the fucking freeway. So Clea does all of this. And then you get this scene of Kid Clea and Luthen blowing up this bridge, not the bridge itself, and then you cut back to Clea. This is not like cool, calm Clea. Clea is like worried because she's in like action mode. She's doing stuff, but she has this like weight on her. And she blows up like a bunch of Imperial transports down on the landing pad. Like all of these like guards' vehicles and everything. Fully like 4+ vehicles.
She had a lot of bombs.
They unpack this later in the next episode, but the ISB, from the scale of this, quote unquote attack, I guess it is an attack, but the attack on the hospital, which isn't really attack on the hospital. Well, I guess she kills him. Those guys weren't supposed to be there. Fuck them. They fully think that this was an infiltration team of at least 3 people. No, it was one single Clea.
Well, I think one Clea is worth at least 3 people.
One Clea is worth 10 people. Clea blows up these things. Tons of fucking stormtroopers and ISB TAC guys flood out of this place. And the floor is almost clear. Clea guns down a couple of guys. Again, you have the like taking advantage of this U-shaped hospital set where Clea's on the left like wing of the U, and she sees like a video game objective through the window across to Luthen on the right wing of the U. She works her way around, kills some guys, and makes it to Luthen.
And then everything is so fine. Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, she does what... She pulls the plug.
Oh, yeah, she does take him off life support and kill him. But, like, normal father-daughter bonding moment.
It is obviously tragic. But this isn't Luthen gunning down Lonnie in the park, right? This is Clea doing what she's supposed to. Doing what they both agreed to. And it's really sad, but I don't know. I think it's also really sweet. She uncouples this like big sci-fi life support device and she cries just like a little bit. She watches Luthen kind of shudder out his last breaths and she kisses him on the forehead. It's frankly really peaceful. It is a surprisingly peaceful death for a man who stabbed himself while Denise Goff was in his like fucking shop. And she slips out just in time as these guys fucking run back up. Clea time. I want to say this. I'm not going to rest on the point too much, partially as a result of its focus. I have not found the actor, but there is a man who, when flashback Luthen is in this ship, there's a man who comes in and checks on Luthen. I've not found this actor. I think this is probably a black man, but there's color grading and frankly like a degree of like, this is shot behind like a fucking wall. So I can't fully tell. That is the only person of color with lines in this episode, which is wild. This is something I will talk about more later. It is very possible that the sheer whiteness of Coruscant was deliberate. It is certainly a contrast to the much more multicultural Ferrix, but Andor is existing in a media ecosystem and frankly a series, Star Wars, where having just white people is not an anomaly, does not stick out to a lot of audiences. Died 1977, born 2025, welcome back A New Hope. So if it was deliberate, if the point was to have Coruscant be extremely white, to have the ISB be extremely white, they should have made that point more clear. They should have been more deliberate in their criticism. Why were there no named characters of color in this episode? Way to go, Star Wars. Anyway, getting off of that, we'll talk about it more someday. It stuck out so much to me that I had to bring it up. Coming back to the hospital, Hirt, taking over from Dedra, essentially. It is so funny. Hirt was this guy who was an assistant in season 1, and I really enjoy Hirt. I don't think he does a bad job in this supervisor role, but he's kind of not ready. Like, all of his vibe is that this is not, like, where he's supposed to be. Has a job. He's supposed to be, like, a rung down a little bit, but, he was on the Axis desk. He's supposed to be on this stuff, and Dedra specifically seems to have done whatever operation she did to get to Luthen on Hirt's day off, which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
She's such a bitch. I love her. But Hirt is doing his job. He's very clear. He's like, oh my God, this is Dedra's fault. Everything happening is Dedra's fault. The hospital director comes in and he's being like, what the fuck are you people doing in my hospital? There was a goddamn terrorism or whatever. Here is like, oh, okay, you're under arrest. Like, it's very... My guy is on it, and he's investigating this. Here is full, like, cop detective mode. Dedra is in an ISB interrogation room, and you have this shot where Krennic is kind of coming around. It's 3 walls and a door, and the 3 walls all have windows, like darkened, like one-way mirrors. And this shot of like Krennic walking around the like observation area, and Dedra's kind of like looking around herself like she's this bird in a cage.
Well, and I think she's looking around because Krennic turns off like the surveillance thing or whatever, and she hears it turn off, and she's like, oh, fuck, I know what that means. Like, I have done some shit to a guy before after turning off the surveillance system. And she's like, oh, well, I guess it's my turn.
Dedra is not about to be interrogated by...
Dr. Gorst.
Multiple people. There's not anybody observing. It is just Krennic. Because this is Krennic's business. This part is very scary. He walks in behind her and he's framed so that his eyes are not in the shot. It's very intimidating for a character that we know extremely well. And he leads with who else knows. Krennic knows that the Death Star stuff got out. He knows that it made it out to Lonnie or whatever. He suspects Dedra fully. Krennic knows that Lonnie had her email password. Dedra has no idea about this, but Dedra is guilty. She's been secreting away. She's like, a few intel bundles were accidentally sent to me.
You're a scavenger.
Yeah, and Krennic calls her a scavenger. And he's like, you have way more than that stuff. You have Edu research journals and years of stuff from the Jedha working group. 2 years, I think he says. She's been collecting this information.
I didn't read most of those files.
I got added to a newsletter. I got added to an email. My bad.
He like slams his finger on her head.
You and your fringy friend. Supervisor Young spent 3 hours last night logged into your account. Now, shall we take a guess at what he might have told Lucen Rail?
It is not the worst violence we have seen done to Dedra, but something about it is like really visceral. It's horrible. And Dedra kind of sticks up for herself. She's like, I am a scavenger, but I've had to be. Like, I wasn't like selling information or anything. I was doing my job. I had to do this. She explains in these like Jedha working group files, she discovered a testimony from a Jedha partisan who described his recruitment. This guy had been tortured to death. This information never made it to Dedra, who was on Axis for years. Probably during when this happened, this guy described that he was recruited by a guy on a Fondor Hallcraft with a bunch of antiques. And that's Luthen. Like, she does find Axis using this way, and Krennic's people fucking tortured the guy to death. And she's like, I had to do this. It's really nice how you kind of feel how this all comes together. And Krennic is not hearing it. He tells her, if you're not a rebel spy, you missed your calling.
Which is a great line.
And I think he's kind of right about it, right? You have this, Dedra does have this real scrappy sense of like information gathering. She would be good at what Luthen and Clea do.
Mm-hmm.
But she's a fucking fascist. She doesn't get to do that. She's playing this game and she fucked it up.
And this is like the last we see of her until the very end.
Not the last. We'll get there. So Dedra, she's like sticking up for herself, but she's also like still trying to do her job. She tells Krennic to go after Luthen's assistant. She kind of describes what her deal is. Krennic shoves her down basically to say, we will take care of it, go away. And then you kind of see Krennic talking to some guys. I guess we'll talk more about that later. Clea at the safe house is hammering into the wall. Presumably, this is why the walls were destroyed previously. This is probably where she got all the fucking bombs and shit that she used for the hospital. I really like her boots in this scene. It's not important, but I I like those boots. And from the wall, she pulls this dusty ass old radio. It's like modular. She plugs some stuff in. This is a great prop. She gets it working.
It uses like fake Star Wars Morse code clicker things. Like,
yes, yeah. She sends out this like pulse code to whomever. And here 'tis down in the basement of the hospital. He's checking the CCTV guy. Yeah, this is the cameras thing. He finds Clea on the cameras. He sees that she was there. He sees her avoiding the cameras themselves. But Clea does this thing, and it is over on Yavin. It is night. And the Alliance is, I mean, at this point, alive and well. The proper alliance to restore the Republic. Also alive and well is Willman. He walks with a limp now. I thought that was, you really see this boy grow up.
It's very important. Yeah.
I think he's a mechanic here on base. He's not like an intelligence guy. He's not like an operative. He's just this fucking ship guy, which I think is really sweet. And Drina is in a tent, I guess, and she's like, dude, this thing went off under the bed. What the fuck is this thing? And she shows him this like box that has this radio in it. And Willman like freaks out. He's like, oh my God, I have to deal with this. And Cassian, that's right, him, hope we haven't forgotten.
Cassian Andor, you might have heard of him.
Cassian Andor K2, finally, K2SO was promised to us from the beginning of this show and only makes it into 2 episodes. Practically 1.5.
But he was good when he was there.
What the hell, man? He was so good. K2 is delightful in these episodes. He is so funny, and he's so cute, and he's so annoying, and I love him. I love every moment with him.
I've been to Coruscant. I was in a parade there once. 200 KX units. The Emperor was there.
Sorry, I missed that.
Cassian should tell him that he loves him. What an asshole. Anyway, they're all playing cards. K2's doing K2 things. Clearly you were having this like very sober analysis droid having a conversation, having like gambling with 2 drunk soldiers. It's such a cute scene. And then Willman shows up with this radio. And Cassian immediately like understands the urgency of this. This is not just like any code. This is not just like any communication. This is what they describe as like a final message, right? Extreme like emergency code, whatever it is. K2 is like, there is a restriction on unauthorized radios. You can't just do this kind of shit. K2's just kind of like pacing around being like, this is not allowed. We're not supposed to be doing this. And Cassian basically says, right now, we're hiding from everybody. Because you start to get a sense of this rift between Luthen's network, or what Luthen's network was, and essentially what it became, what the Alliance is now. You kind of get this feeling like the only people who are there to look after Luthen, but now to look after Clea, are Cass and Will. Just like these fuck-ass guys on Yavin base. She's not calling Rebel comms or whatever. It's just Willman. And while they're having this conversation, Clea keeps kind of sending this message out periodically. She's looking at a timer to kind of see how often she's supposed to. And then Clea's code comes through for real. Cass sees it, and that's what sends him into action. So over in ISBHQ, Hirt is having this conversation, kind of getting him up to speed with Krennic and Partagaz. This is really irregular. Hirt has no idea why this is Krennic's business, why Krennic is here, why Krennic is so worried. But Krennic is like, oh my God, this is the most important thing of your fucking life. Do not stop until you find wherever this information is gone. Find this person, because Hirt doesn't know that there's this information leak. Krennic essentially threatens him. He's like, if you fail to do this, you will be added to the ever-lengthening ISB death march, is I think what he says. And Hirt is trying to get a sense of the situation, and he asks like, okay, we need to, for the warrant to go get this lady, what are we getting her for? And Partagaz immediately comes up with like creating an excuse. She's diseased. She's escaped the hospital with this infectious condition that threatens everyone with whom she comes into contact. She must be found before thousands die. And you know, there's like something very literal about that, right? Where they don't want her to come into contact with anybody. She does have like this seditious information that they are so afraid of spreading, and it does get out from this hospital out into the world, and then thousands are killed because of this information, because the Death Star's existence is leaked. There's also, you know, the double meaning, which is back in season 1, Leo Partagaz's monologue about the ISB's job, that they're healthcare providers, that they treat sickness as people who are like rooting out sedition. This is a virus to them. The inexplicable resistance to imperial norms is infectious. That is a theme in these episodes. I don't know, you really get the sense that Partagaz is making something up, but he's not lying. Leo and Krennic have this spat. Krennic says that he can't protect Partagaz. Partagaz is like, you're supposed to be done by now. You really get the sense that not all is well with Partagaz, with the ISB.
And then they wish each other like good luck.
Pretty much, you have a plague to stop.
Like they know they're both cooked. Like
Cassian is going to save Luthen. I mean, it's Clea, but he thinks he's going to Luthen. And to do this, he is fully going AWOL. He is taking the U-Wing and leaving. Which this baffles me. This is like the K2SO thing. In this show, in Andor, Cassian Andor, Rebel Intelligence, Andor does not do a single mission for the Rebel Alliance proper. The stuff last arc was either him leaving when he wasn't supposed to, and then him just getting a job from Luthen. That's what the Mothma stuff was. The Mothma stuff benefited the Alliance, but it wasn't for the Alliance. He never does his fucking job in this show.
yeah, he just does it in all the year-long gaps between. This is like a vacation for him.
This really is, this is him like...
This is his PTO.
quiet quitting. But no, he's taking a U-Wing and he's not declaring where they're going. You have this very angry scene of Draven marching through the hangar, a comms guy on the U-Wing like radio who I think is a Tony Gilroy cameo. I could be wrong about that, but it sounded like Gilroy.
I think that's what a lot of people are saying, so I feel like you're correct.
Okay. If other people are saying it, I'll defer to them. He's trying to get them to come back in. K2SO is counting the number of orders that they are disobeying. And Willman has been left behind to account to Draven what's going on. Draven essentially calls them lapdogs. He's like, Luthen whistles, and the two of you go to help him. Willman is like, I know that you don't like Luthen, but none of this would be here without him. And that's true. It doesn't surprise me. This is always kind of where we knew this show was heading. But there is this needle that this show is trying to thread with season 2, where they have to catch you up on a shit ton of stuff every time they do a year-long gap, while also developing the story. And there's a lot of telling the audience, and there's a lot of subtle stuff too. It's a mix. And some of it is really cool. Being like, this is where people are, here's us catching you up. Some of it is really quite cleverly done. And I think some of it is really lacking. I think the setup for this Yavin stuff, at least for me personally, doesn't land especially well. We don't know what Luthen's relationship to the actual Alliance itself is. We don't know what the Alliance is in this show. I think it was really interesting to choose not to develop Mon's role in the last arc in episode 9, basically just saying Cassian got her out and we assume that she's important. In the show, it's not clear why Mon's speech was important besides emotional catharsis. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think they're spending so much time telling the audience what is supposed to be the case without actually doing the legwork. We spent so much time, frankly, on Gorman this season. Maybe Arc 2 didn't need to have 3 Gorman episodes, that we barely know what the Alliance is. And that's not necessarily a problem for someone like me or whatever, but it means that this show is not nearly as strong as I think it used to be. It's gesturing so much in ways that I think aren't as resonant as they should be for what this show wants to do.
I think you're spot on, because when you talked about doing these sort of reaction episodes, one of the things that you mentioned is wanting to sort of delve into the politics of it. And like, obviously it's still there and it's important. And also I felt like I struggled to come up with stuff. And then I also felt like I struggled more personally watching this because it's like you said, the pacing's a little weird. There's certain things that they're just telling you and you're going, okay, cool. That's wonderful. But I would have appreciated if there was more to this. And I don't want to get too nitpicky or down on this show. It's been hard in a sense to watch the show.
Well, I genuinely think all of this is the consequence of doing 2 seasons of this show. They made an entire season of this incredibly complicated and genuinely fantastic show. And then they went, we cannot do this 4 more times. This was so much work. And I totally respect that decision. But I think cramming 4 seasons worth of material into 1 season, let me tell you, 12 episodes has never felt so short. I think it's a loss. I think the show is worse off for it. I think I am worse off for it. Like it feels almost personal. It is a shame. There's so many good things in this show. There's so many strengths. The show looks amazing. It sounds amazing. Its emotional moments usually hit so well. And then it just has to pull so much weight and it can't actually establish what has happened here. These massive things, not just in, the setting, but in Cassian's life. In Luthen's role, we know that the rebellion has outgrown Luthen. We always knew it would. It's not a surprise that he's not a part of it. But why? What is that interpersonally? It's gestured at in some ways, and it's not always done wrong. But what would this have looked like if any time could have been spent actually developing this before it happens? I think the way they told the audience how Dedra found Axis is really cool. And I think the way they tell the audience this Yavin stuff, I don't know if it's clumsy, but I feel like it's lacking in a show that is so methodical in so many other ways. I don't think it earns it. And that sucks. This show is rushed. This season is rushed. This finale is rushed. And it's far, far, far from bad, but it has been hamstrung by its format. And I didn't think I would get to the end of this and say that.
You can't help but compare it to season 1. Like every single time I would pick up a new episode and I just go, it's great. It has these moments that are great, but it's not season 1. And then I was talking with my partner and I was just like, the 3 episodes all at once is killer. It's hard to, like I said, it's hard to watch because, you sit down, everything's going on in the world. You sit down on the couch, you're exhausted from work, you're exhausted from just living in general, and then you sit down and you're like, cool, a Star Wars show. And it's 3 episodes back to back, where if you want to engage with like the fandom, engage with other people, you have to watch it all at once. Otherwise, you're going to get spoilers. And it's hard. And I think the release schedule does a disservice to the show as a whole.
Yeah, I think we are not watching it in ideal conditions. We are watching it as it comes out. And that is not a good experience for this show right now, which is a shame to say. I've said it before, Star Wars becomes Star Wars on the rewatch. There are lots of things I didn't like about Andor Season 1 that I prefer now in retrospect. But the amount of loose plot threads left in Andor Season 1 and its second season, but especially its second season, you could knit a fucking sweater. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There are places where I think that's really deliberate, like with Cassian's sister. But it does add up. It's going to be hard to suss out what was deliberate and what was impossible to do, what was sloppy, what was the consequence of making this 2 seasons. One of Dedra's last scenes, she is in this ISB cell and she is looking ragged. She's a mess. She's taken off her rank plaque. She's like excited that somebody's coming and she's like deflated when she sees that it's Hirt. And Hirt asks her for advice. He's kind of like, it might help you get out of here. in I guess, a show of lesbian gay solidarity, Dedra basically explains to him, they have these pulse codes. We found a thing on Ferrix. We found a thing with Krieger. This is the same type of tech that the way that Clea is reaching Will is the same type of tech that Bix used to notify Luthen in like episode 2 or whatever. She gives him this tip. They only get this close to finding Clea because of Dedra's information, because of everything that she did, because she is the expert on this stuff. And she burns for it. But Hirt follows this lead. They piece together this pulse code and figure out kind of where to find it. Hirt goes in with ISB Tactical. Cassian, Melshi is on the mission. Cassian, Melshi, and K2 are kind of going down to this apartment where Clea is, and you kind of proceed through this sequence. Cassian and Melshi getting in just before these guys show up. It is pretty tense because they're trying to convince Clea to go with them. Clea delivers the information. She's like, here's the information. You have to pass this on. Death Star, Urso, Krennic, Scarif, Jedha, all of this stuff. K2SO gets aboard in the ship. He kills a bunch of guys. He takes out the comms guy who's reporting back to ISB HQ, back to Partagaz. He totally destroys this ISB mission. The tactical guys almost make it to Clea. They try to smoke Melshi, Cassian, and Clea out, but K2's here. I think there is a degree of suspense here, but as soon as K2's coming off the elevator, a lot of that goes away because he is a tank. He fucks up this ship. He destroys their comms. He slams these guys against the wall. He uses Hirt's body as a shield against the last of the guys. And the guys have thrown a concussion grenade, and that has laid Clea out flat. But our guys are basically fine. And this ISB mission to prevent this information from getting out is a total failure. Cassian, Clea, and Melshi, and K2 all get off-world with this information. They all know. And kind of the rest of the arc is the Alliance dealing with the fact that Cassian went AWOL, ran away, did this rogue mission, Rogue Zero ass. The climax essentially was here. This was the last stand against the ISB. It went perfectly fine. That's not what this part is about, but it's really interesting to me. And I think really nice that the show wants to kind of, in its denouement, just have its characters talking. I think that is one of the strengths of this episode, even if it left me a little cold on my first watch through. So kind of back on Alliance Base on Yavin, you have this, it's not a meeting yet. You have basically a holo call with Saw Gerrera where Bail's here now. Who knows what happened there? Bail, Mon, and Draven all on call with Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera's looking very Rogue One'd out. They're beefing. Saw's been doing whatever on Jedha for however long. And basically, it seems like this call is to tell Saw that the way that he's kind of doing this stuff on Jedha is not making things better. I'm not entirely clear how, frankly. Saw's like, well, you don't know that I'm on Jedha. You have all of these spies and stuff, but I exactly know everything you're trying to do. Saw is on Jedha. Saw's doing the Jedha stuff. This is confirmed information. We know where Saw is at this point. And also, yeah, he's on Jedha. He's trying to save face. Mon makes the point that it is the Empire that he should be afraid of, not the Alliance. I'm wondering what the two of you thought about this scene, because I don't know what to make of it. I think we know from this show specifically, we know so little about what Saw is up to that I don't know how to evaluate this. I don't know how to evaluate this conversation.
When I was watching it, maybe I'm just placing some meaning on it, because I kind of felt the same, where I was like, a lot's been happening that we just haven't seen, and we're meant to, pick up these breadcrumbs, basically. But, in my notes, I have sort of ideological differences as well as, personal differences. And when those maybe intertwine in some ways, there's these differences of opinion. And maybe that's sort of how we can evaluate it. But I don't know. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of information surrounding that.
The idea that there are these ideological and tactical divides is an important one. I think it's important in this season and important last season. But I think because Saw is not present in the latter half of season 2, it's really hard to figure out what the fuck is going on with him. You get the sense that this is present, that this is happening, but I don't know if I can kind of suss out the shape of it besides essentially what's there from Rebels. So Cassian comes in with the U-Wing, coming in hot. They want to deliver Clea to an actual, medic. She's out, she's hurt, they need to kind of get her on planet. And they're coming in with really important information. And Radis is back. Admiral Radis, my guy. Cassian and K2 are like, we're just gonna fucking land. We're just gonna fucking land the U-Wing. We're just gonna go for it. They're not giving us our clearance, which is a terrible idea. All these soldiers like confront them at the U-Wing when they want to deboard.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to take like the laser flat gun to the U-Wing as they try and like 9/11 the frickin' pyramid.
Jesus. This is very, very, very reckless on Cassian's part. And of course, like, Cassian is not acting in secure ways, but also part of the reason that Cassian can't act in secure ways is that Luthen and Clea have, however this has happened, been disenfranchised from the Alliance. And I think that that is like the ultimate cause of this, where Cassian is probably not doing things exactly right, but he wasn't wrong to do this. And I think that's kind of an interesting contrast where it's like, yeah, he should probably be doing his job. He should probably be like following OPSEC or whatever, but
I have a note about when is protocol good, when is it actively harmful, and how do we balance those two things that I think is what's happening here. Do you save the people that you care about in some form or fashion? Do you follow the orders that'll protect the Rebel Alliance? And how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I definitely think that this season especially has like this really complex relationship to the law, I guess, to rules too. And I think it is interesting to me how much these like personal connections matter. The reason that Lonnie got this information is because presumably he's been doing this work and making friends with people. Cassian is this incredible social operative. These important things happen all throughout this season because he's making these connections. You have this description from the Force Healer last arc that Cassian is gathering things to him. And that is true. Everything that he's coming across, everything that he's interacting with, all leads up to where Cassian goes and the amount of good that Cassian is able to do, the number of people that Cassian and the people he works with, the people that he has gathered are able to save. And that includes the people who stick up for him this arc, right? All of these soldiers meet the U-Wing, and it's Draven who makes the call to essentially let Cassian through. He escorts him in, and they have like a meeting and shit with Alliance High Command. And it is because of these people who Cassian has helped or who like advocate for him. Mon advocates for him in this meeting. It's these really personal connections. The personal connection that means that Clea opens the door as soon as she hears Cassian's voice, that really feel like the strength of what I guess the Axis network is. It is just people who know each other. In this season, at least, it feels so much less about protocols and so much more about the network. And the network is people with social and political connections, people working together. And the Alliance succeeds, and I think that's important to note. But I do think the places where the Alliance fails in these episodes are where they are not listening to those kind of like more personal elements or these points of connection. And I'm very curious to frankly go back to the first season of the show and see how that connects, see how that theme kind of resonates. You have this very important scene with Alliance Command where Cassian basically tells them everything that Clea told him. And it is at this point hearsay, right? It has gone down this chain, and Bale is being a real hard ass. Bale is really emphasizing that there's no way to prove any of this information. This absolutely could be false. And Draven's kind of believing Cassian. Draven believes him. Draven sees the connection to what Saw's been doing. It's all kind of making sense to him. They brought Senator Pamela back, though. It is Pamela, right? Yeah, they brought back the senator from Terrace from Rogue One, which I really like. I think she's really good in Rogue One, so glad to see her. They also brought the fucking beard guy who I hate. Good to see him too.
I'm just reporting what he was told.
It sounds like a paranoid fantasy.
Does anyone in this room, besides Senator Mothma, have any idea how much you owe him?
Oh, please.
I wonder how much of like Bale's sort of like reaction to this is also just no, like they're horrible, but like They wouldn't, right? Like that's a weird thing to say, but like how much of it is just like hoping that it's not true? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think Bale has been in it so long that he's coming at this from a very different perspective. As Cassian, as Mon, I do think his perspective is really limited. The cool thing here is kind of the tension between these people who are mostly, this is like a few military leadership people, but this is mostly like the Rebel Alliance's quasi-civil government, essentially. Like 4 different senators, and then Draven, who's Alliance intelligence, and Radis. Dodonna and Merrick are away. Is essentially the story given. And one of the reasons why the information that Cassian has is suspicious is that they don't trust Luthen either. It's not just about trusting Cassian, it's about not trusting Luthen. Seeing him as like shifty and secretive and paranoid. Similar in some ways to the way they talk about Saw. You know, after the Hollow Call, Bale says that Saw's insane. And Draven's like, no, he's not. I mean, we know they're doing stuff. We know the Empire is doing stuff on Jedha. They tell Cassian he's confined to quarters. Right, Cassian should potentially be arrested at this point. And the only reason he isn't, the only reason he can go on to do the Rogue One shit in a day, that's how close we are to that stuff, is that Draven and frankly Mon cover for him.
I think there's a lot of parallels between what's happening sort of to Luthen right there, in this case, like more so his memory, and like his monologue from season 1 where he says, I've sacrificed calm, kindness, kinship, love, and like gratitude and those sorts of things, right? These people don't trust him because he's done things that they don't necessarily like or agree with. And at the same time, I think a lot of them do recognize that he has been important to the Alliance, that this network was foundational. And maybe they don't necessarily love that. Maybe they haven't killed their ego quite enough.
I don't know. I mean, you get this line about that kind of in the Safe House where Cassian is criticizing Luthen, and then Clea is like, shut the fuck up. He died for this. He was right. It does feel like in some ways, Luthen is this person to be critiqued and is critiqued in this season, but he is both necessary and often extremely correct. And I do really believe that. One of the next scenes is Vel being visited by Mon Mothma, who, you know, hasn't been present in this arc, but now is. She's got the fucking haircut.
The chop. It happened.
It has happened. She looks like she's, you know, supposed to. Her outfits are much more understated. She's not fully wearing the white sheet, but it's pretty close. I like the way she looks in these like more personal, like casual scenes, though. I do think she looks really beautiful here. I love how they make Mon look in this show. But Mon and Vel have this conversation about Cassian. I think it's really sweet to see Mon here having this like personal connection with her cousin. Like, I mean, they are living in the same place now. They're doing the same thing. They're fighting the same fight. I like that Vel made it this far for that reason. But they have this conversation, and Mon basically asks Vel to go talk to Cassian, to check on him, but also, you know, kind of get this information from him, see what Vel thinks. Meanwhile, you kind of have this thing with Draven and the fuck-ass like mustache operator guy from Rogue One, whose name I have no idea about.
His canon name is just the mustache guy.
Mustache comms guy is getting calls from Tivik. Tivik is a contact of Cassian's in Saw's partisans. Tivik's saying that he will only talk to Cassian.
Another message from Kathleen. He won't talk to anybody but Andor.
Call him back.
Draven is kind of feeling the weight of this, right? Draven buys what's going on with Saw. He believes it. Draven is believing what Cassian is saying, and crucially, it is all about Scarif and Urso, and it is also about Jedha, and Jedha is where Saw is. And I think Draven is starting to feel like something is going down. I have to actually take this contact from inside Saw's people seriously. Andor might be the key to something here, this connection that he has with this guy. And Vel goes to talk to Cassian, and they share a little drink. They drink to Luthen, but they toast other people. They toast the people from Aldhani, Terramin, Gorn, Nemik, Cinta. They say that they can't toast them all, which I think is really sweet. Not just Aldani, but everyone else. They mention Ferrix, they mention Gorman, they mention the Donnies specifically. I really love this scene. This is something that I feel like this show has earned. I think having these two people who have gone through so much get to look back at it and recognize the humanity of the people who have been essentially disposed of by the plot, I think is really great. They start to kind of have this conversation about people in the Alliance claiming that they were there on Aldani. That's how important what they did was. Vel says she would kill anybody who she heard claiming that because it was just them. They're the survivors.
And there's just something that hurts and resonates so much knowing that in a few days, in a whatever the timeline is, who knows, it's just her.
It is, yeah. God.
And that's just, there are some things about season 2 that we don't necessarily like or wish were a bit better, but that is something that they earned and something that hurts in a very good way.
Vel kind of interrogates Cassian about, not like interrogates, but asks him about the Luthen story. She wants to know what Clea said. Cassian essentially says Clea wouldn't lie. Which is true. They know this person. They've worked with her. That connection is important. Clea kind of wakes up and she gets up. It's raining outside and we start to hear the beginning of the manifesto excerpt from Rick's Road, the end of season 1. I want to share a little bit of my kind of experience with this specific scene where I was feeling really weird about this. I was feeling kind of cold about this finale. And I heard those words and I was like, God, it's Nemec. But then I also went, God, they're just repeating the fucking Nemec thing. I will confess. I didn't want to say this because I knew that I would be disappointed. I was hoping there would be... Sorry, my cat is...
She has thoughts.
She has things to say. She did watch a lot of the episodes, so she would.
Did you like it?
She thought it was rushed. But... I was watching this and then I was like... I had this quiet hope that they would have a different part of the manifesto because this wasn't all of it. It was a significantly longer text.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like when people talk about the part from Rick's Road as if it is the whole thing because it is not. That is just like the fucking call to action, evocative, emotional part. I want to actually hear the analysis, god damn it. But so I started to think, I was like, they're just fucking reusing it. And then it doesn't play the whole thing. It goes from Clea kind of leaving the medic place to go wander in the Yavin jungle because she's traumatized and lost her dad, not dad. Then it's not just, oh, here are these words. Oh, here is this. No, this is the recording and it is being listened to by Partagaz. And it is in this moment where watching this last night, I went from, they're replaying the thing? That doesn't feel... And then I felt violated. I was like, that is not for you to hear. That is not for the ISB to listen to. Why the fuck can he listen to that? It was established after Andor Season 1 that at least this section of Nemec's manifesto, or the full text itself, I don't know which, kind of made it beyond Cassian. That is established fact. And I think it's very loosely implied here that the manifesto, that Cassian shared Nemec's words very quickly. I don't think he held on to it and kept it for himself. I had someone ask me a week or two ago what happened to the manifesto. And I was like, well, either he put it somewhere or he lost it on Yavin and it got recovered there, or he took it off of Yavin when he escaped in Arc 1. And I think Cassian just straight up gave it away or shared it around, copied the file, emailed it to a bunch of people. I think that's why this is making the rounds, because Partagaz is listening to this and he has this curious look on his face, and Legret walks in and Partagaz asks if Legret has heard this manifesto, and Legret is like, yeah, I've heard parts of it. Because this thing is getting everywhere. And I will admit that I wish that we could have seen that. I wish we could have seen who it reached. But I love that it has gotten so high as to be listened to by this guy. It is really, I think, quite wonderful, and I think it is quite a tribute to Nemec that he is that dangerous, that the ideas that he is spreading are that hard to contain. The ISB cannot. They literally are unable to. And Partagaz asks, who do you think that is? Legret doesn't have an answer, but Partagaz is thinking of the humanity of it all. It's real. It's real to Partagaz.
He sort of comments on the fact that Nemec's manifesto has kind of spread out of control. I found that very touching and also sort of very, I don't want to say realistic, but plausible. That is something I feel like would happen or does happen really, where, despite the fact that no individual can really move history on their own, oftentimes call them revolutionary, call them whatever you like, in sort of liberatory movements, there is this impetus almost, this writing or this speech or this event or whatever that sort of spreads beyond itself and becomes sort of the rallying cry of the revolution. And we didn't know what the rallying cry of the revolution was against the Empire. Now we do. And despite all that's happened between now and Nemec's death, it's his manifesto. And I thought that was very interesting and very evocative. And I'll leave it at that.
Legret is there to take Partagaz somewhere, maybe retribution for letting the Death Star stuff get out. This might be the end of the road for Partagaz. All this did happen on his watch. And Partagaz asks for a moment before he's taken down, and Legret leaves him. And alone in this boardroom, Partagaz takes these steadying breaths and has this look on his face. And I don't know if it's a look of failure or of regret or what, but he's been in this headspace all season. I haven't known what's going on inside him, but he pulls out from under the desk a fucking gun. Outside of this Imperial boardroom, Legret and the stormtroopers hear a shot fire. And that... Oh, I will say this. I've been complaining about the demographics of the people who die in this show. Not everybody died. People are like, everyone in this show dies. No, that's not how that works. That's boring and also just not what has happened, clearly. But I will say, these episodes killed a lot more of the white characters than I expected. So that'll be interesting to see play out in my spreadsheet. But
not the spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, the spreadsheet is, I don't know. I've been driven to madness.
The scene itself, wonderfully done. I think it is, it's interesting. It's good. It's well done.
I'm assuming you've heard it before.
Bits and pieces.
Just keep spreading, doesn't it?
It's been hard to contain.
And it's really interesting to me how the Empire uses disease and disgust in the language whenever they talk about the rebellion and rebellious ideas and those sorts of things, that I think is really interesting because you sort of see it throughout, I would say especially these last 3 episodes, but it's just this idea that it's a disease that's spreading around and that it must be cut out. And it's like you said earlier, the ISB is healthcare. The language that's used there is so important because it's not something that you necessarily catch, but your subconscious will. And I think it's just very interesting.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. That is such a through line of these episodes. It feels really so deliberate that Luthen and Clea separate for the final time in a hospital. Obviously, there's this aspect to the disease analogy that is, these ideas are disgusting, that this is disorderly, that this is undesirable. But the other thing about diseases is that they just happen. They are a natural phenomenon. There are things that you can do to prevent them, but you cannot eradicate disease itself. Disease happens spontaneously without instruction. And it also spreads person to person. If you are trying to deal with an epidemic, you can't undo that. You can't get rid of the disease. You achieve herd immunity, or you get it mostly gone, that specific strain or whatever. And the other thing about diseases is that they are organic. Again, they transmit person to person. There's this fundamental unit, and it is the individual who is quote unquote infected. And it's funny that this analogy of disgust and disdain is also really quite poignant and beautiful. Especially when Partagaz shoots himself over it. Whoopsie. Vel leaves Cassian, and it's pouring rain on Yavin. It's really moody. It's like that rainstorm on Ferrix 5 years ago. And wandering out in the rain, in the cold, is Clea. She has no idea what to do with herself. She doesn't have a place here in the Alliance. But Vel is leaving Cassian, and Vel finds her, gives her a coat, takes care of her, leads her back to wherever Vel lives. Vel and Clea have had this really oppositional and even antagonistic relationship. Right? As much as Vel cares about the cause, as much as she did for Luthen, Luthen was also an enemy of Vel's by the end. Everything that Vel lost, in so many ways, Luthen kept her and Cinta apart, and Vel didn't like Clea. Vel barely respected Clea's role, but now they're here in Vel's house. Clea has Vel's blanket around her shoulders, drinking a cup of tea, and these people who have been bent by the secrecy of the Axis network, these people who have survived. Clea's dealing with how adrift she feels. She doesn't really even know where they are, is what she says. But there's this real moment of connection. And Vel leaves, and she goes to find Mon, and Clea's just there, in Vel's house. Draven comes to tell Cassian about what's kind of going down on Jeddah, that they know that there's a Star Destroyer parked above the Holy City, that they were just telling Saw not to make things worse. I think it's worth saying that, is the Star Destroyer there for Saw? Yes, but also no. Because the Empire isn't doing what they're doing on Jeddah because of the partisans. That's what it seems like on every level of the ISB, except for where the secret is known. The Empire's destroying Jeddah for its Kyber, for this weapon. I doubt Saw is making things better, but I don't know. Maybe the Alliance was wrong to tell him to back off. But Draven's kind of telling Cassian about this, telling Cassian about the calls from Tivik. And Draven, he says, if this is a trap, then it's like one hell of a setup. All of these dominoes are falling down one after the other. Everything is lining up. It's falling into place because it all makes too much sense. They don't have evidence. They don't have the files from Lonnie. They don't have Lonnie. They don't even have Luthen. They have intelligence. And they have connection, which is really all Luthen ever had. And Draven wants to send Cassian to go talk to Tivik, even though Cassian is this rogue fucking operator. This rogue fucking one. He sure is a rogue one. They should have said that. They should have. I loved when Bail Organa went to talk to Cassian.
Hey, you rogue one.
Yeah, and said, "Boy, Cassian Andor, you really are a rogue one."
They should let us write Star Wars.
They should let me write Star Wars. I'm normal and can be trusted with Star Wars. Draven and Mon go directly to Bail. Mon's in her essentially plain clothes. She's not in her dress. She's not dressed fancy. They go to talk to Bail and essentially convince him that what's going on is real, that they trust Cassian to whatever degree, and that's kind of where it leaves it. The next morning, K2 wakes up Cassian. Cassian is dreaming about his sister all those years ago on Kenari, fully 20 years ago, something like that. It's been a very long time. He never found her. He was never going to find her. He stopped looking. That's what his mom told him. I guess he listened. This guy who's lost so much for all of this. K2 wakes him up. He pokes him with his big metal finger. He tells Cassian that the man that Cassian doesn't like is here. He means Bail. Bail is visiting him. Bail asks, they have this really sincere interaction. Frankly, I wish Bail wasn't all dressed up for it. I wish he was dressed more normal like Mon is. Bail asks if Cassian slept well. Cassian says no. Bail asks if he ever sleeps well. Cassian says no, and Bail sympathizes because he doesn't either. Bail, in no uncertain terms, reiterates the mission. Go to Tivik, learn what you can, come back to us. And these two men who don't get along connect over their, basically it's more important to fight than to not. Bale says that if he's going to die fighting the Empire, like he does in like 3 days, that he wants to go down swinging. This is the week of A New Hope, essentially. Both of these men die in a matter of days. He wants to go out swinging. And that's more important than keeping Cassian on house arrest. There are things more important than the alliance itself. And the thing that is more important is, as Luthen said, the cause. The rebellion is more important than the alliance, and everyone there should know it. Everyone there should be willing to sacrifice the alliance for that, I think.
I think Bale says to Cassian, do you trust him? And he says, I try. And I love the use of try within Andor. Throughout the whole series, it is about trying to trust people, trying to do the rebellion. It's just about trying. It's just an underrated theme within Andor that I've really, really loved.
Cassian has his mission. He's gonna go meet Tivik on Kafrene, get more and more information about this weapon that they're starting to hear about. Cassian gets his gun, gets his jacket. He waters the plants. He did not kill the plants. He's taking care of this space that he lives in, even though he's not even sharing it with Bix anymore. Like, this is what Bix was on in Arc 2, asking if they could take care of the safe house. Cassian is taking care of his house. And you have this montage that I think on paper, very silly. The idea that it's like, oh, he slow motion walks to the ship and then does Rogue One. That's goofy as hell. I'm sorry. That's stupid. They don't need to do, it doesn't have to be Rogue One. But oh shit, I have to grab my cat, hang on. It's not just that he's walking to the ship. He's walking through Yavin. He's walking past the Alliance. He sees Melshi leading guys jogging, military stuff, but also human stuff. He walks through this jungle. He sees these guys. It's a very mixed crowd, frankly. Lots of women, lots of men. Wilman and Drina are having breakfast together. They didn't kill Wilman. Mon and Clea are also having breakfast. They're out there with the soldiers. Of course they are. That's exactly where they should be. Cassian's walking through, this little town. We start to get flashes of other characters. The first one we see is Perrin in a limo, having clearly spent the night with Skolden's wife, I believe, is this woman?
That threw me off. I'll be so for real.
He's...
That happened, and I just kind of went, okay. It felt weird. I'll be so for real.
It's insane. It is funny, though. Perrin's drinking. Perrin looks haggard. He looks unwell, frankly. We don't know what's going on with him, but still. Clea is waking up in a bed. She kind of is willing to face the new day. Dedra is in the same sorts of prisoner uniforms like we saw on Narkina 5. They sent her to fucking jail. We see her in one of those sleeping pods. Again, like on Narkina, the lights turn off. She's sitting down and she has her hands on her knees and she just starts sobbing. She breaks down. This is what's left for her. I don't think this is Narkina proper. I hope it's not, frankly. If they ever address it, I hope this is just they have those facilities elsewhere because it makes sense to be everywhere. Cassian's still seeing people. He sees the Force Healer, and the Force Healer gives him this look. That guy's important look. We see Saw on Jeddah looking beat up as hell, practically waiting for Bodhi, even though he doesn't know it. Cassian rolls up to the U-Wing, and we see Krennic in front of the about-to-be-completed Death Star. No laser dish, but that'll happen soon. Cassian tells K2 where they're going, and they leave. For a few years now, I think probably since the show first started, the people working on the show have made it very clear that this show would end on Cassian boarding the ship to go to Kafrene, where we first see him in Rogue One, which makes a lot of sense. I never wanted Andor to be about Rogue One. I wanted it to be about Cassian, and I was really impressed by how season 1 made it about him, made it about that instead of the Rogue One stuff. And this arc is about the Rogue One stuff. I think it's good at it. I think it's cool. I think the way it feels like a culmination of the Gorman stuff also is earned, but...
Yeah, it doesn't feel like too heavy-handed in a sense.
Which is wild because it is essentially a cliffhanger that ends with, go watch Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Which I think is inherently absurd. And I also, that's not what I wanted for Andor. I like Rogue One a lot, but I don't think Rogue One is like Andor almost at all. I don't think it scratches the same itch. It's not as dear to me. I don't think it's as well written because they, making a film is hard and they cobbled it together, and it's not a bad thing that they had to do that, but that's just true. But it also felt like this is the reality of the Alliance, and that's what I liked. I liked seeing Yavin. I liked seeing all of these people. I liked seeing that it mattered, that all of it matters, even though it's not over.
It's also, I think, the sort of deliberate choice to focus on the community, on Yavin. That's what matters, right? Is each other and the connections we have. And, you said it earlier about how the connections Luthen had, that Cassian had, or was able to sort of create, were what got them to this point. And so to actually see it sort of come to fruition, and they're living in a community and they're working together and everybody's doing all these things, it felt so hopeful and resonated so much. And I really enjoyed those moments in that sort of montage.
They said that the last shot would be Andor going to Kafrene. And they lied. Because right after that, there's this little scene on Mina Rao, the farming planet from the beginning of the season. B2EMO is playing with another droid, because he said puppy dog. People are setting the community table like we saw in those episodes. And we see Bix. She's there. And I got what I wanted. The show didn't end with Rogue One. The show ended with Bix. I appreciate that. Thank you, Star Wars. I appreciate you. Gave me what I asked for. I am on record saying that they need to do that. However, I can't accept a win because Bix is kind of walking out, looking into the distance, standing in the crop. And she's holding a little baby. And this isn't on paper necessarily a bad thing. I like that Bix is safe, and I like that Bix gets to have a family. However, Bix did not get to do anything in this arc. Bix did not really get to do anything last arc. Bix essentially existed to be sad and sidelined.
Yeah.
I like that she lived. I think it would have been a really bad thing if she hadn't. I think it would have made the show worse. I also think that relegating Bix, this person who genuinely did work in the rebellion, to someone who her main role in this finale is essentially the legacy of this man lives on because he sired a child. We don't know that the kid is Andor's, but,
It's a pretty good assumption.
We're paying attention, and the kid is Andor's. If the kid weren't Andor's, that would actually be really interesting, and I would kind of like it, and I would enjoy if she had a new partner and a life. I would really respect that. But no, she's alone with a baby. If we're talking about how stories work, that's Andor's kid. Relegating her to just that and not letting her participate in the Alliance. After last week, people were like, is Bix pregnant? I think she's actually pregnant with Cassian Andor's baby. And I was like, wow, that's a terrible idea. I didn't even think about that because of how genuinely fucked up that would be to do.
And then they did it.
And then they did it. Maybe it is an exaggeration. Maybe I'm being unfair. I think that this is the most distressing thing that Star Wars has done to a lead female character since at least sidelining Padme in episode 3. If not the fucking gold bikini. I think taking Bix and making her this punching bag for trauma again and again, barely resolving that, and then saying, oh, she has to leave so that the cool guy, she's gonna have a baby, I think is genuinely some real tired and lazy like writing tropes. And while this show does have women who are more complicated, but it does not let Bix be that complicated, except with regard to Cassian in this season. They quote unquote work through her trauma by killing Gorst, and then it's all about Cassian for her. Bix has to go away and raise this child so that Cassian can go do the cool guy hero stuff that we know that he has to do. Like, this is not good writing. From the good writing show. Like, genuinely a baffling decision.
And I think it represents larger issues, like with Star Wars in general, sure. But like with Andor, I mean, certain choices were made, and it just feels a little frustrating for something that is very, like, is pretty politically coherent, is taking a stand on things. It's not sort of skirting around the issue, right? And it's just, it's frustrating because it feels like it cheapens other things that have happened.
Andor is this show that, again, is hamstrung by the format of its second season. That is, I think, a real weakness. And that's not to say that Andor couldn't have ended stronger, but just that a 2-season Andor, the way that they wanted to, probably, I don't know if this is like a possible task to do a year every 3 episodes. I think that is a really hard thing that they tried, and I respect that they took a swing. Andor is also severely hampered in its quality by the extremely limited perspective of the people who make it. To paraphrase something my friend Meg said, the Empire can hire a woman. Why can't Tony Gilroy?
I like that. We should get that on stickers or t-shirts.
Yeah. I don't hate this show. I love this show. Andor is dear to me. All of my creative work that I do comes out under the name of a thing from Andor because it is that cool to me. But come on. A baffling thing that they have done with Bix. If they want to give her a kid, they have to earn it. They have to make her 3-dimensional because we are living in a world where women don't get to be 3-dimensional, where women in fiction become mothers and get sidelined. And that's exactly what's happened to Bix here.
Yeah, there's just been, I mean, you know, there's controversy about what happened with Cinta. That's the only word I'm gonna use for that.
I've heard some people weren't very happy about it.
Yeah. Wow. Imagine that.
Who could that be?
But it represents a larger issue with Star Wars. Who are the people creating Star Wars? Maybe we have more diversity in who's being represented on the screen, but it's also about who's behind the camera and who's working on the scripts and who's checking on things. That represents a larger issue, obviously not just with Star Wars, obviously not just with Andor, with media in general, but it's frustrating and it just kind of sucks.
You heard it here first. Daughters of Ferrix review of Andor. It just kind of sucks.
Oh God, oh boy.
This is a good show. I like it a lot. It's important to me. I'm excited to rewatch it a few times and get settled into it and parse through my critiques in more detail. I think this show is written in a very rich way. I think it looks amazing. The production design is sublime. And oh boy, will I talk about this and the way that Andor depicts women, while not always bad, still often careless. The way Andor seems to have chosen not to put non-white people, even like as bit parts, without actually kind of confronting that fact and making sure it's meaningful to the audience, to an audience of passive viewers. Who makes Star Wars? And who are they making it for? I think expecting Andor to live up to those expectations, to want to dismantle the very systems it critiques, and cares about critiquing. I think expecting that from Andor is taking Andor seriously, is taking Andor's politics and themes seriously. Is it bad when colonial violence is done to women? Great. We're on the same page with that. So let's actually work to confront the systems that lead to the normalization of that. Is it bad to steal land and subjugate people and destroy the lives of those categories that have been decided to be the least privileged? Great. Then they should be in our media. And if they're not, then it should be really clear why, who you're trying to portray, why they're like that. Andor does a lot of things subtly, but it doesn't have to do everything, and it doesn't. It can say things to the audience, and it has.
Well, it's like when you and I were talking the other week, where I said it can make sense to kill off characters, but it's also important to understand the ways in which certain characters resonate and how certain people have been treated historically. War is war, and people die, but this is also a story, and it's made by people who don't live in a vacuum. Certain choices have certain weight, no matter what the intent is.
When people have kids, people get pregnant in war zones.
It happens.
Star Wars Rebels did a very similar thing where it kind of like continued on the legacy of cool, badass Jedi Kanan Jarrus because he has a son now. But Hera never left the rebellion. Hera was a general. And before that point, Hera would never have been relegated to role as, literal mother. She got so much depth as far as that show goes to be a person before they were like, yeah, she also had a kid with Kanan at the very, very end. That's a thing you can earn. You can earn that. I don't think women shouldn't be mothers. That's fine. There's something that I love about Bix getting to have that for herself, but that's it. That's Andor. Cassian's legacy is saving a kajillion fucking worlds from the Death Star. Like, they didn't have to do that.
It's focusing on certain norms, right? And focusing on this idea of, well, you have to have kids to continue your legacy and all this stuff. And it's like, but you don't. There's other things that make up a legacy. It doesn't have to be a child, necessarily.
Especially if you're a woman. It's a bummer. I think clearly it's supposed to add to the tragedy, right? Vel is like, you should reconnect with Bix. Because Vel knows if Cassian had done that, then Cassian wouldn't go sacrifice himself to bring down the Death Star,
Mm-hmm.
And there's a version of that that's juicy, and it's a version where it doesn't erase Bix as a person. The ending was okay.
Endings are the hardest part.
Absolutely. And I think Andor is a very ambitious show. And that is probably my favorite thing about it. It tries to do a lot, and it succeeds at a lot of things. And there are very few things about it that are actively bad. But it is both possible and necessary to critique art when you like it. Andor is the Star Wars thing that I think the most about always. It is a big deal to me, and I am going to complain about it forever. And I'm going to praise it forever, and I'm going to hold it with me forever. And I'm going to expect better from Star Wars forever, better than Andor. And I know there are a lot of people in fandom spaces watching Star Wars, whatever. There are a lot of men, especially, who don't think that better than Andor is possible. But when Andor means doing what it has done to its women, to its non-white characters, then yes, I expect and I demand better. And that's okay. I can live with that. I can live with Andor. It's at least it gives me something to talk about.
It's like you said, we should be able to critique the things that we love and that we like, especially something like this, which is remarkably left for a mouse property.
Certainly.
And also,
There are ways in which this show is like deeply radical and speaks to like a political reality and you know, a historical reality that is not acknowledged in most media, even like serious grown-up media. I appreciate Andor for that. I appreciate Andor for kind of breaking that barrier, doing it with Star Wars, which is really cool. I think Andor in a lot of ways has set a precedent for the type of conversation I like to have about Star Wars in universe, which is this really like, I mean, it's the historical materialist view, right? But also, come on, man.
But also, it
was written by a white guy. It was written by a bunch of white guys.
Yeah.
Mostly straight white guys.
Who have a very limited experience, and it comes through with the writing.
There is a long history of left-leaning white men being, shall we say, careless towards intersectional issues, concerns about race and sex. And I just think that if you're in that position, it is your duty as a person who has been privileged by the systems that you profess to oppose, it's your duty to kind of unlearn that. And hey, if you're listening to this show, thanks. Like, I think, you know, listening to people who aren't men talk about this kind of stuff is actually a really big first step. When there aren't women on screen, you should be asking where the women are. When there aren't women in your history, you should be asking where the women are. When there aren't women in your politics, you should be asking where the women are. They are 50% of the population. White feminist gets mad at Andor. You can't make these people happy.
You can't.
You can't. It's true. That's not Andor's fault.
Yeah. And
it's not my politics fault either. I'm just like this. I'm just grumpy.
Oh, Star Wars.
Star Wars. And as fun as it would be if this show were longer than 2 seasons, as much better written as I think it would get to be, thank God it's over. I never have to talk about it again. It will only ever be by choice.
Until you do.
No, I'm already writing about Andor.
Yeah.
I'm trapped forever. It's fine. He's looking down on me.
He's your bestie. Yeah, he's your bestie.
I love Cassian. I've loved Cassian since I first saw Rogue One. Everyone was like, oh no, why are they making a Cassian Andor show? No one cared about Cassian Andor. I care about Cassian Andor. I love Cassian Andor.
They wrote it for you, actually.
They wrote some of this show for me. And then they kind of stopped writing it for me in season 2. And, you know, it's fine. I think getting an entire season of a Star Wars show is a lot. And I got that, so.
And season 1, I mean, it is wonderful. It is so smart. The writing is so well done. The production, the sets, all of this. There was multiple times where I'm sitting on the couch with my partner watching it, and I'm just crying. Yes, it's Star Wars, and it's a galaxy far, far away, and a long time ago, and all these things. And also, it's not at all. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Season 1 is brilliant and radical in so many ways. To have a show like that resonates so deeply and is so important in that way, it's incredible that it got made.
From a technical standpoint, all of Andor is a triumph. Season 2 is a triumph. It is so well acted. The dialogue is so good. The people who made it should be proud of it. I hope they are. I really think they are. And I expect better in the future. I demand better. But God, did we have it good.
What a show.
What a show. Stupid, dumbass fucking Andor show. I love it. I hate it. It is the most important thing to me. That is a television show, potentially.
I love it more than anything it could ever do wrong. Or whatever the quote is.
That is the quote. I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
They fucking had me. They fucking had me with the Cinta stuff.
I'm gonna put a little asterisk on it, I think, but you know.
I kept reminding myself during the Clea stuff. I was like, Clea is gay. Clea is gay. Clea is basically gay after episode 1.
Yeah.
She checked out Vel. Like,
Yeah. I agree with that.
it counts. It's not adequate for representation, but it is adequate for me putting Clea on the little shelf of favorite Star Wars lesbians. So,
It's a little fruity.
all right, Corey, where can our listeners find you and your work?
I am on most social media platforms as some iteration of Love Days. That's LOV and then days. So you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Blue Sky, you can find me on Substack until I find a better alternative, and also on Twitch, where every other week I do streams with my friend where we raise money for different causes. I would love to have people join and help do what we can. Those are every other Thursday.
I expect you listening, you right now, to go, view, join, donate, all the above. If you have any questions, suggestions, or corrections, you can send them to our show email, daughtersferrix@gmail.com.
If you want to listen to new episodes as they release, you can find us on most places you can listen to podcasts. You can find sources for this episode on our website, daughtersofferrix.com, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at FerrixPod, FERRIXPOD.
Thank you to our comrades, Joel Miranda, Emerson Reyes, and GirlFag22 for making this episode possible. If you want to support the show, visit patreon.com/daughtersofferrix. I've been Eleanor Mueller. You can find me at The Letter Bomber on most platforms. Sophie, what about you?
I have been Sophia Dunstan. You can find me at the Red Line Pod, where we talk about trains, at Episcopilled, where we talk about religion.
This episode was edited by me, Eleanor Mueller. Our background music is by Louis Zong. Our intro was arranged by me, with theme by Nicholas Bertel. Thanks for listening. I'm free! I have to edit this now. Editing Ellie, if you're seeing this, you're free now.